Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. On the 24th of March, the government of India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ordered a nationwide lockdown for 21 days, limiting movement of the entire 1.3 billion population of the country as a measure against the coronavirus pandemic. The lockdown came as cases of the virus spiked and for many came too late in the day with ill thought through preparation. The government of Modi had sat with complacency for months, preferring to stoke community tensions and watch as mobs burnt down Muslim shops and homes during a months-long campaign to assert the Hindutva fantasy that India was for Hindus alone. To cover its obvious failures, key politicians and its RSS supporters opted to turn the country on its Muslim citizens, blaming the mounting cases on the Tablighi Jamat Ijtima in Nizamuddin and what they dubbed an insidious campaign to spread the virus to Hindus, what they perversely called Corona Jihad. The virus, in their warped view, was another weapon used by Muslims against Hindus. This week I speak to Fadl Hejazi about the crisis facing the Muslims of India. We spoke to him previously on this programme about the Modi government's connection with the fascistic worldview of the RSS group. Fadl is an Islamic academic based in India. Now Fadl, let me first start by really understanding the announcement made on the 24th for a lockdown of the country. I understand it was made in haste and the Modi government really did not think through the consequences of its decision. And it led to a great deal of problems, especially for migrant workers in the country. So can you tell me a bit more about why this announcement was made in such haste?
The Prime Minister announced at 8 p.m. that from the next day, 6 a.m., the country would go into lockdown. And this is not the first time they've done that. They did that with the demonetization issue, where the Prime Minister announced on prime time TV at 8 p.m. and announced that 4 hours from his announcement, that is at the midnight of the day that day, all the currency, rather the 86% of the currency, which is 500 rupee bills and anything above that, that was the 1,000 rupee bills as well, would be demonetized, would be rendered useless. Basically, we just rendered paper, and everyone would have to just go and exchange that. Now, obviously, we are talking about a country which has 1.3 billion people. Imagine all of them then rushing to get their currency, their currency notes exchanged. Now, obviously, this was almost similar to the demonetization issue, because this country has a lot of migrant population. We're talking about close to 50% of the population in many of these cities is migrant. They come from rural areas, from towns, and we're talking about as far as 2,000 kilometers, 3,000 kilometers. And these people, a big chunk of these people are people who are living as daily wage workers. This is a concept that probably is new or is non-existent in many developed societies, but in underdeveloped countries like India, this is common, that people work on a daily basis, and they go in the morning at 9 a.m., work till 6 p.m., 7 p.m., day's wage, and go back home. And it is that money that they earn on that particular day that feeds them. So missing a day's work can literally cause a lot of distress, because that is what they're really living on, that amount that they earn on a daily basis. And so the complete lockdown meant factories being closed, all domestic workers being rendered out of work, and they had no solution except that they leave the city and go back to where they came from.
This is because India doesn't have an effective welfare system or safety net which these workers can rely on.
True, yes. And that is what I wanted to make a point about, that the concept of a basic income doesn't exist in India. Even though on paper it does, but that is just a meager amount, which you have to go through a lot of bureaucracy to be able to get. We're talking about 500, 1,000 rupees a month, and it's not worth the effort to even really, just to get this meager amount. Now, these people do not have access to any funds. There is no support from the government. There is no access to public health institutes as well. So you're talking about a reality where these people were staring at starvation, and starvation due to not having money and food, and also dying, the possibility of dying because of the virus. So, I mean, that is a point we should probably go into, and that is about the state of the public health institutes in India. And people realized that, and so they did not find any, any alternative other than just moving back. And so, remember, many of them are live on rented premises, and that was another challenge. Yes, that they had to arrange for the rent payments as well. There were announcements that the government made a few days later saying that all rent has to be, foregone. So the next 2 months, no landlord could seek rent, and that people who are currently employed in private companies should be given their salaries, and also that the government was going to arrange for places to stay and food for the people. But the announcement came too late. It was about 3 or 4 days after the crisis started unfolding.
But why? I mean, why, Fazal? I mean, you would imagine that a government would think ahead and plan sufficiently for such a major decision.
This is how they have been formulating a lot of the laws as well. So they have this prospect that people may go through turmoil. There may be a period of turmoil. People may have to go through personal inconvenience, but that is a price of being, expressing your patriotism to the country and showing that you are, you're loyal to the country. This is how they've seen it, and this is how the demonetization, when it took place, the public responded in very unexpected ways. Even though the whole process had unforeseen consequences on the economy, it led to a lot of losses in the economy. But you found people literally forgiving the government. They said, see, this is we have to go through this. It's a difficulty. It's a temporary difficulty, but in the long run, the government's decision is for the good. So this is that kind of mentality which they built the people, and so you would be surprised that people did not really complain about this, this whole decision, except for the poor people who they don't care about. Yes, they are not. They vote bank anyways. It is the middle class and the upper middle class and the elites who really form the bulk of the voters for the existing government. And so for them, this was seen as something that was needed. And so if you look at the comments that these people are making, this thing that none other than Modi could have really done this. It is just Modi and his leadership that is able to deal with the coronavirus in the way he has, and there could be no one else who could do it in a better way. So when the decision was really made, they had expected the people will simply stick to wherever they are, and what will happen is that they will then start arranging for the essentials. But that did not happen because you had big populations. In the first day and the second day, that started walking because remember, all the public transport was stopped. Yes, so the people were walking. People sat on motorcycles, on foot, and this kept on going for at least for several days after the lockdown happened. I myself had to make a trip to Uttar Pradesh, and I found people on the road at 3 a.m. in the morning walking. At least on a 60-kilometer stretch, I found at least 200 people walking, and these were people with children, women. A majority of them were families. Yes, group of families. Across along the stretch, I found so many people were just walking. Yes, and people say that they haven't been fed; they've been just walking for days and days. It's all over the news. Yes, as people have made trips as long as 1,000 kilometers and 1,500 kilometers just on foot, some of them on motorcycles.
And I saw that Modi went on television after this crisis became apparent and begged for forgiveness from the Indian population. I mean, how did ordinary Indians view Modi after this?
Yes, and you're right. Yes, he did. He did come on TV, and he was seeking forgiveness. And this man is good at theatrics and his own branding. He knew what to do. He was on TV, and he very much unlike any other prime minister. He was folding his hands in front of the people. He was asking them to forgive him. He, in that short address of a few minutes, and he folded his hands 8 times. That matters a lot. When you have your PM holding your hands in front of you, you start overlooking at your own problems, and you start looking at the greater good. In my understanding, this actually would not even barely dent his image or his credibility or even the party's. It actually just helps him further consolidate the voter base that he has.
But also, it seems that the national papers in India were very quick to blame the Muslim community. And can you shed some light on these accusations made against the Tablighi Jamat and a markaz that was held in Nizamuddin, and the idea that the virus was generated from that gathering, and there was some speculation that members of that group deliberately stayed in the markaz even after the lockdown was announced?
I think this is part of the bigger or the larger, vilification program that the ruling government and the media is running against the Muslims in the past few years, primarily after 2014, ever since the BJP came to power, and they picked up the Nizamuddin issue. And they singled it out while there were many other similar congregations happening across the country. Remember, the announcement came out of the blue. The ministry on the 13th of March, the Ministry of Health was issuing circulars saying the coronavirus is not a health emergency, and this is on the 22nd. They're announcing a lockdown. A national lockdown. So you can imagine, people were not really, as you said in the beginning, people were not given enough time to actually, organize. The Nizamuddin event took place on the 13th. And this was exactly on the day when the Ministry of Health was announcing that there is no health emergency. Now, the event is generally announced a year in advance. So it's a yearly event, and it is a mashwara that they do. And this was, scheduled for, in months in advance. And so the event starts, it takes place for 3 days and then ends. And you had, if you're following the news, on the 16th of March, there was another event that took place, and that was done by the Hindu Mahasabha. The Hindu Mahasabha is a group that is a Hindu group, basically. It's a Hindutva group. They conducted a Gaumutra party to cure coronavirus. The Gaumutra is the urine of a cow. So they conducted a party. It was a public event where they invited people to come and drink the cow urine in order to cure the coronavirus. And it was on the 16th of March that the Delhi government announced, issued a notification saying that all religious institutions should be closed. Now, at this time when this was happening, you had visitors going across the country to different religious places. So you had this Tirupati temple. They had 40,000 visitors on the 17th of March there. They had on the 18th of March as well, they had 40,000 visitors. But on the 19th of March, it was closed. And the government then, on the 22nd of March, they announced what they called as a Janta curfew. It was a public initiative, basically. It was not a legal, legally binding curfew. They said people have to come forth and self-isolate themselves. And so what is happening is, this is if you take the Nizamuddin issue into perspective, Nizamuddin issue or the Nizamuddin event took place at least 10 days before the lockdown actually happened.
Fadl, this is amazing. So what are the grounds for suggesting that the virus began, or at least the virus was transmitted primarily through this markaz?
When the lockdown was announced, there were a lot of Jamaats that were there. So you have to remember that this is the global headquarters for the Tablighi Jamat, or at least it is the Indian headquarters. Now, you had Jamaats from across the world. You had Jamaats from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from the Middle East, and they were there at the markaz. And so, imagine you get 10 hours of, all you get is a 10-hour window to really organize their travel, and then you can't travel. So the markaz was smart, actually, or I would say they were really wise. The moment the announcement was made, they decided not to keep all the Jamaats in the markaz because of the fear of the virus spreading. And so what they did was, they sent these Jamaats to different masajid across New Delhi. They said, see, this Jamaat from Indonesia, they have to go and stay at that mosque. They have to go at that mosque. So they actually tried to distance them from the markaz, in the sense that they didn't want them to congregate at the markaz, right? And even in those masajid where they were sent, they were practicing social distancing. So I know in so many of these masajid, they were markaz people, the Jamaat people from different places, and they were so careful. I myself experienced it. I saw this Jamaat that was from the Middle East, and they were reserving themselves to a different floor of the masjid all this time, ever since they were sent. But what happened was, the government decided to, because when they realized that there were a lot of hotspots and the numbers were increasing, they picked on this story and they decided to make an issue out of it. Not that there were no people who did not get the virus at the markaz event. There were people who did get the virus. The real numbers, we are not sure about it. Because there are numbers that are being, that are being told on the internet. They're saying that it has reached over 1,000 cases, but we don't know what is true, because there is a lot of ambiguity in the way the information is being spread. Because this has been known from the government that they've always tried to deflect their own incompetence and failure. And they here have a very, they have a very, what I would say is, they have the right kind of people who they can put the blame on, because that would just pacify the people. Now, this is obviously going to have a lot of dangerous consequences for the Muslims, primarily because this is further put fuel to the fire for the Islamophobic agenda that the BJP is running. Ever since this has taken place, the kind of narrative and the public discourse that has been taking place in the country has become very difficult for people to bear.
So how have they abused this issue and used it against the Muslim community in India?
And so what is happening is, we've got people, very popular people, people, Olympians. There's this Olympian from India. I believe that she even won a medal there, Babita Phogat, and she went on Twitter and she said that she made a lot of abusive comments about the Tabligh, and it was so well received and so supported. You had, in a matter of 2 days, you received 88,000 retweets or likes, and over 30,000 retweets for the tweet. Yes, and it was very abusive. Eventually, Twitter asked her to take it down, but then she was smart and she took it down and just put a photo of the same tweet again on her account. And so you have these kind of things that have been, that have been continuing. So there's been this narrative that has been built in the country. Remember, we spoke about this discussion we had the last time a couple of months ago about Modi's India and about the Hindutva agenda in the country. And this is a continuation of that, of that idea that they have of trying to convert the country into a Hindu Rashtra, which is effectively a Hindu nation. And so what has been happening is that there's a narrative in the country where they have been, trying to tell the Hindus, and this is how they've been able to bring the Hindus together, that is that you are in danger from the Muslims. The Muslims have multiple ways of doing jihad against you. It is not necessarily that they may only undertake physical jihad against you, which is through qital. Rather, they have other jihads, and then they've tried to outlace those types of jihad, which includes media jihad, which includes love jihad. Love jihad is jihad where a Muslim man goes and marries a Hindu woman. They claim this is love jihad. And there's media jihad. And then the Tablighi incident was pushed as Corona Jihad. And this made a lot of sense to them. They said this is another subset, or this is another type of jihad the Muslims are doing. They want this virus to spread among Hindus, and they want to kill Hindus through this.
I mean, why do ordinary Indians believe in such falsehoods?
I think if it had not been the Muslims that were here as the intended target, then they probably may have questioned it.
Right.
But,
so it conforms to their worldview already.
True. Yes. And so that really gave it a push, and the narrative has really, has taken, what I would say is really spread and has gone further. The public discourse which is happening, which is about which is the vilification of Muslims, which is about trying to enact laws which brings the Muslims into control. So this idea that they're now spreading is that the Muslims are disorderly. We need to bring laws which needs to put them into form. We need to cut them to size. We need to understand that they are disloyal, they're treacherous, they are fifth columns, and they have been throughout history been enemies to Hindus, and therefore we need to show them their place. This is the kind of idea that is really taking place now. The last time when we spoke, we were only speaking about the Kashmir incident. I think, if I'm not wrong, the Babri Masjid verdict came after that.
No, it came before. I think you made reference to it. Yeah.
Yes, the Babri Masjid came before that, right? What came after it was the CAA and RC. That was the law that that they enacted. And that was really about showing the Muslims their place. It was just about showing the Muslims, that this is about Hindus. The country is about Hindus, and they found within that law a good way to disenfranchise the Muslims. And so they wanted to, they wanted to seize on an opportunity to redefine the citizenship and then subject Muslims, especially the poor, undocumented Muslims, to the threat of disenfranchised limbo. So, and for them, that was like winning a political lottery. So, and they know that the non-Muslim citizens, they can be persuaded to accept the inconvenience of proving their citizenship as a price of a patriotic pan-Indian purge. So, through which what would happen is all these treacherous aliens are identified, they're interned and deported. So for them, this was a gamble worth taking. And for them, it is one step, with this, they move one step ahead with the idea of the Hindu Rashtra. And they've got other laws in line as well. They've got another law that they want to bring in place, which is again targeted on towards the Muslims. There is this another idea of jihad, which they say is a population jihad, which is that the Muslims increase, tend to have more children, tend to have wives, concubines. This idea is very much prevalent among Hindus, and so they're trying to bring a law which is called the Population Control Bill. Now, the Population Control Bill, once it is enacted, would mean that anyone having more than 2 children would not be able to access anything from the government. So you cannot access the public health facilities, the public colleges, public universities, any scholarships, any public jobs. Yes, this is.
But surely that would impact on the Hindu majority as well as the Muslim minority.
Well, the large part of the vote bank for this particular government, they actually hold up to it, and they've already following that. This idea of just having 2 children is an old idea within India, and they've been pushing this for a very long time. Now, they've tried to control the population in various ways. They even had forced drives, a couple of decades ago, under the Gandhi government, when they tried to force sterilize people. It hit them back very hard at that time, but they've tried different ways. Yes, and over the years they've been running this campaign of just having 2 and no more than 2. And so they want to, but they still know that people, Muslims primarily, and people in the villages, they still do not abide by that, and so for them, this is a way of getting back at them. This is the CANRC's one law that actually furthers their agenda of being able to establish or convert India into a Hindu Rashtra. It is like, if I'm not wrong, Israel has a similar law as well, where citizenship is not given to everyone. Only select people are given citizenship. If I'm not wrong, it is just Jews who get the citizenship. The similar law that they want to bring in place in India with the CNRC, and then you have this population control bill. They've got another law which has been in wait, which is the unified civil law, uniform civil law. That law will mean that all private personal laws will be dissolved. So, which means, for example, inheritance according to Sharia will not be. You cannot be giving away your inheritance according to Sharia, or the idea of talaq or nikah. All of these will then have to go through the civil law. Means a lot in India. This is an area which really no government has attempted to tinker with.
And what do you think is the long-term goal behind these measures against Muslims?
What they want to do is, by 2024, when the elections take place again, when Modi comes back into power, they want to be able to announce that we're now entering Hindu Rashtra. This is how it is seeming at the moment.
My reading of the current situation and climate in India is that even Muslims who have spent many years trying to conform with the wishes of the Hindu majority are feeling pressured today, and we know that Muslims in India have had a long history of Muslims who have been involved in the arts and in film and in general culture, and the Hindu population has seen them similar to how they see singers and actors in the local population, right, from the majority population. But it seems to me that from what I'm reading and hearing, that even those who, for all intents and purposes, look like the mainstream are now feeling the pressure of just holding a Muslim identity.
That is very much true. If you go back into the history of India and how the whole partition, the process of partition took place, the Muslims who stayed back in India held the view that we could stay in harmony with the majority population, with the non-Muslims, and they did. The relationships, in principle, were good initially, at least, uh, but they deteriorated over the years. The Muslims, to be very frank, did not have any clear vision or plan for the Muslims in India. It was whatever they had was very fragmented. Um, and what I must say is that over the years, the right wing groups, especially groups like the RSS, the VHP, the Hindu Mahasabha, and all these groups, they had a plan, they had an ideology, they had clarity in what they wanted, and for them, it was about building a reach at all levels of society. And so we're talking about um, across the population, reaching out to them, building relations with them, winning them over to their own ideologies. They worked on the grassroots, at the grassroots level, and uh, at a very micro level. They built their relationships, and this obviously took time. And so we're talking about over 90 years now. The RSS was established in 1925, and similarly other groups as well. They've been in place for decades, and so these groups, they built their relationships, won people over to them, and they not only did that, but those who were not at that level where they could be won, they won them over by creating fear in them against the Muslims primarily. They built within them hate against the Muslims and fear. The hatred towards the Muslims was that, see, the Muslims have been ruling you for over 1,000 years, and they have been plundering your resources, and these are foreigners, these are invaders, and you need to take back from them what belongs to you. So the reason why your country is backward, the reason why you are in poverty, the reason why you're starving, is none but the Muslim rulers of the past. And so this kind of work that they've done over the years has actually borne fruits. So we're talking about, in 2020, when we're talking about them, I think what's important is to look at the history as well and the work that they've done at the grassroots level. There was this analysis that was being presented by Ramachandra Guha. He's a left center historian, and he said that it's unprecedented in the way how this government has been able to hijack or at least influence every institution in the country. And so when he meant institution, was the pillars basically, and he said that the election council, the election commission, is completely loyal to the government. So is the judiciary, and so is the Reserve Bank, which is the central equivalent to the central bank in many countries, and the politicians already are. You have no institution that remains, because the only institution that remains, and the media as well, I'm forgetting that I didn't miss out the media there. So he was saying that this did happen in the past during Gandhi's time, where she was able to do the same with all the institutions, but not to that degree with the central bank and with the judiciary. But with this government in place, that has actually happened, and this has been happening for a while. They've been working on this at all levels. And so I happened to interact with a judge, and the judge said that a lot of these judges, when they're promoted from a district level to the state level or to the national level, they're rubber stamped, they're vetted. Only then are they promoted. Otherwise, they're never promoted. And this is the reason why they're able to get very favorable judgments. Very rarely do you find a judgment that does not favor them. Now, the issue with democracy, obviously, and with modern constitutions, is that you can have judgments which are there's this terminology within the legal circles, and if I'm not wrong, the terminology is is subjective and objective. And so you could have a law, which you could have a judgment which is objective in nature, which you have a judgment which is objective in nature, in the sense that it conforms to the law as it is. Or it could be subjective, where the judge reinterprets the law in a manner which is within the general framework of the law, and give a favorable judgment to the government. And so that the government has done that again and again. They've done that with so many issues. Every time there is a litigation against a law that the government passes, and you find that the Supreme Court rubber stamps it. Very rarely does it, reject it, even though it may be contradicting the Constitution. So that's been happening with the Supreme Court as well. And that was one area where Muslims really believed in. They used to think that, see, in the end of the day, we have the Supreme Court. The court is one place which can never be interfered with. It can never be, influenced at the national level, at least. Yes, at a state level or a district level, it could be. But they now realize that that is gone. That is not happening anymore. And you find, this judges from Supreme Courts. There's the ex Supreme Court judge was just recently nominated to this Rajya Sabha, which is the upper house. I'm not sure if you follow that, in the news. And so, with that, you realize that it's a full circle now. They're being rewarded. This is the same judge who issued the Ram Mandir verdict, and so he's effectively, in ways, he's rewarded by being given a Rajya Sabha seat. And so this really further breeds, fear, and it creates a lack of tranquility within the Indian Muslims. And that's why you find a lot of these celebrities as well now questioning and saying, can we really, continue staying in India in the way how the country is and the direction which the country has taken. And a couple of years ago, there's this popular famous actor, Amir Khan. He came out openly and said that India, has a lot of intolerance that is being bred. And there was another actor, Nasiruddin Shah. He made a similar comment. And I must say, these are not very, they do not come across, at least, as devout Muslims. But they do hold on to their identity in a strong manner. And they made these statements.
Fazal, as you speak, we can't help but get the impression that things look very bleak for Muslims in India. Can we be anything but pessimistic about the future of Muslims in your country?
We can't just make the inference from this that basically everything is going to be bad and it's just going to get worse and worse and we can't do anything. And and you just sit at home, or many people are actually even planning to make hijrah, migrate to other countries. And I think the lesson there really is the lesson that needs to be drawn is from the Quran, where in Surah Al-Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. That those to whom the hypocrites, when they said, indeed the people have gathered against you, so fear them. But what happened was that it only increased them in faith, and they said, وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَ اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. They said, sufficient for us is Allah, and He is the best disposer of affairs. And similarly, in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ahzab, He says, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. So when the believers saw the Ahzab, a lot of these groups that were gathering against them in the war, they said, قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. This is what Allah and His Messenger had promised us. وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And Allah and His Messenger spoke the truth. وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. And it only increased them in faith and acceptance. So the lesson, what I think we should really draw from here is, the first thing is that this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is also a consequence, in a way, of the fact that we as a community did not plan, did not have a vision. We did stay back in India. So the Indian Muslims did decide to stay back. They chose not to make hijrah. But if they chose not to make hijrah, then they should have had a plan for the country, for the Muslims in India. And we did not have that. And the lesson there is that we as Muslims, in whichever country we are, which includes India, is that there needs to be a strong Muslim leadership that needs to have a plan, which needs to be not just reactive, but has to be proactive in principle. I think this is the lesson that needs to be drawn. And we also need to remember what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah if I'm not wrong, that is in Mu'minun, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ, that they planned and Allah planned, and Allah is the best of the planners. And similarly, in Surah Mu'minun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ, that do not assume or do not underestimate that Allah is ghafil, Allah is unaware of what the zalimun are doing. And in one way, if you look at the past few months, what was happening was you had the CANRC law that was enacted, and as a result of that, Muslims started protesting, and these protests became massive. They became, they went to a national level, and there are a lot of atrocities committed against the Muslims. A part of which was the Delhi riots that took place, in which hundreds of Muslims were killed, and a lot of their property were damaged, and eventually many of the Muslims were arrested as well. But what the government was doing all this time was, it was saying that we will not take a step back. We will continue with our CNRC, the law that we've enacted. We will continue with that, and we will start the procedure to start collecting data from the people, which is a part of the NRC, the National Register of Citizens. But subhanallah, if you look at how suddenly they had to announce that they will not be continuing with this process, and they said the process has been cancelled indefinitely, just because of the coronavirus. There's a lesson there for us, that it is due to Allah's plan that they had to stop their process. So we should realize that the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bigger than everything, and can literally a tiny creature, which is effectively, if in scientific terms, it's not even a living being, has literally brought the whole world to its knees. It just proves, it just tells us the magnitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, and this should only increase our iman and make us more stronger in our resolve and in our yaqeen.
Fadl Hejazi, Jazakallah khair for your lucid explanation of the situation there, but also your encouraging words at the very end there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you and your family and the Muslim community there safe, and bring something good from the difficulty that you and they are facing at the moment.
Jazakumullah khair. Make the same dua for you as well, and may Allah keep all of us and the Ummah al-Islamiyya safe, inshallah.
Some very sobering but optimistic words there from Fadl Hejazi. Now, just a quick announcement. We've started a book club on our website to encourage reading, and I think that's a quality all Muslims should aspire to be good readers. So if you want to find out more, do go to our website, thinkingmuslim.com. But for now, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.